And welcome to another exciting episode of The Energy That Surrounds Us. I'm your host, Michael, and I am joined tonight by two amazing guests that I feel totally confident you guys are going to totally enjoy. So I am joined by Durinda and Joseph Stewart.
Hey.
Hello.
Now, some of you might recognize Durinda because I actually was on her show recently.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. And thank you so much for being on.
So, why don't we take a few minutes and I'll start with you, Joe. Would you like to introduce yourself and give a little bit about your background?
I've been in the paranormal since I've been about, I think, 6 or 7 years old. I've been involved in UFOs and cryptids and demons and ghosts. A lot of that I started back in the late 60s and still right up to date, I'm still doing it.
Wow.
My main focus right now is the demonic, secondary ghost if we encounter them, but it's mainly demonic now.
So, I'm not familiar with that term. What is a demonic secondary ghost?
What I'm saying is that we basically deal with demons, people that have demonic infestations, and we also, a lot of those locations, there are ghosts there, and so we also interact with that. Durinda's a very good medium, and she can interact with ghosts. She can interact with demons. She can hear them talk, and she can also see them, which is of great value when you're in the field.
And I can't think of a better way to switch over to introduce Durinda than that.
Hey. So I've been doing ghost hunting for a while, but the demon hunting stuff is new. So that's why I'm the wife of a demon hunter, because I married into it. I go into the field and we help people who have demonic infestations. I call it ghost hunting with a twist, because sometimes sometimes it's more than just a ghost. It could be the demonic there. And we have a lot of our clients that just don't know where to go because, they think they have a ghost. They think they have something. So ghost hunter will go in there and say, yeah, you have a ghost, but they're trying to get rid of what's going on in there. So that's what we do. So I'm a medium that I can get the names of the demons, which is kind of important to help get rid of them. So that's what I do.
Wow. Wow. I'm trying to think of where to put a question to that is. And so I guess the easiest way would be is I'm not sure how many investigations you've done, but what percentage do you feel like is actually demonic and not a misunderstood spirit?
It's not 100%, but I would say, I don't know. What would you say, Joe? 70%?
Well, I mean, our focus is society demonologist. So basically we got people that have demons.
Yeah, so they contact us.
There's a small percentage of that's due to mental illness or due to ghost, but very small percentage.
Okay.
But when I was a ghost hunter, I would say there was probably a good percentage that was demons. They just mimic ghosts, and they want to remain hidden, so you don't know that they're there. So it's really hard to say there, but they are there. And those I have groups that do contact me when they say, I think we got demons here, and I go help them out.
That's cool to have.
Well, we just did that. When was that? This summer we had a case that was a Detroit group was going in on a haunt, and they wanted us to go and make sure there wasn't demons there because they're suspicious of that. And it ended up being 2 children that were ghosts that we were able to pass on. We do rescues too, ghost rescues.
Yeah, so what happened was this particular woman was remodeling her mother's old home, and her mother used to collect things, antiques and things like that. And I kept seeing these 2 children. I kept saying the twins, and they couldn't figure that out. And what happened was that there was a little picture that was underneath the stairs that they had when they were remodeling, and it was a picture of a little boy and a little girl, and that's kind of the twins that happened. And so they were making things a little havoc for the people that were remodeling her mother's house. And so we did a ghost rescue to help bring them to the other side. So that was pretty satisfying.
And one
too.
I'm sorry. One way that so they were attached to that picture,
right?
So one way that we tested it was the boy was older and the sister was maybe a couple of years younger than he was, and so I had the owner take the picture, leave the house, and in contact by phone and drive like a block away, and then Durinda was watching these ghosts, and then the boy would disappear, and the lady says, "He's in the car with me. I can feel him." And the little girl started crying because her brother was gone. And I says, drive a little bit further. And she drove maybe another 100 yards. And then the little girl disappeared from the house. And you could just feel the totally difference in the environment. I said, okay, come on back. So she drove back. As soon as she got within half a block, the ghosts were back in the house. And then she brought the picture back.
Wow, that was pretty cool. I would not have thought about that. Having them leave with.
Well, that's what I do. I'm kind of like, I treat this like science. I experiment, how things happen. I had a thing called the Ghost Research Group. And I used to work with psychologists and people like that need help, where they know that it is supernatural, but they can't handle it as a psychologist because they might lose their license, at least here in Michigan. So it would be like, Harry, get a hold of this guy, and then I would go in and see what was going on.
Right, and so you raise a good point. You're not actually, so your background isn't in like spiritual anything. So what made you turn and go from just regular ghost hunting to focusing on the demonology side?
Well, that's all in the book.
Yeah.
Basically, my encounter where I knew I was dealing with a demon was in 2009. And I befriended this guy, and I was helping him out. And the demon that was involved was literally killing the guy. He was wasting away like a Holocaust victim. And it ended up being a sex demon, and his girlfriend was constantly being raped by this thing. So that's the journey, is learning how to deal with these demons. I study their behavior. I do things like we would try different symbols, religious symbols and stuff, to see what would be protective. So I didn't know if they worked or not. I would go and face them. And if I got beat up pretty bad, I knew they didn't work until I found something, it did work. And so to me, I'm studying their behavior. And that's all in the book, the journey, all the things that happen. So through stories, you see their behavior. And then later on, I do a little bit more analysis, comparing what I found out over the years, that kind of thing.
Right.
And I do what's called bindings. I bind a demon to an inanimate object. So basically the way it works, someone comes to us, we usually arrange a phone call. Durinda is very good. So when sometimes just by them talking on the phone, she knows immediately demonic's involved, and then names start coming to her. So I have to have the names to be able to control them. And so sometimes we follow up and go to their homes as well. We used to do that more pre-COVID, not so much now. And so then what happens is that we confirm what's there, and then I set a time to do a binding unknown to the people that are the victims.
Right.
Most times it's never done on the property. I do it in an isolated place. And what I do is I summon the demons to me. I have some protection, but when I summon them to me, at some point, now they got access to me, and I have to be quick at what I do in binding them to an inanimate object. And that's basically how it works. And then the individuals that are being affected are immediately free of it. It's gone forever because it's trapped.
Right.
It can't. And it's just totally amazing if you're actually in the environment when you do it. The environment changes. It's just immense what happens and how people change. And it's just fantastic what happens.
It's like the light turns on. There's like
Yeah.
light. It's like, kind of like in the movies when the angels are going, ah, it's kind of like that when you get rid of the demonic.
So I gotta say, my curious mind is, where are all these objects that are bound? Where do you store them? What do you do with them once they're bound to something?
Well, unlike Ed Warren, I don't put it in my basement.
Yeah, no, we don't have a museum. No, I refuse that.
Can't say. But they're in a I mean, over time I learned how to bind them correctly. So they're in a state of kind of like in a coma. They're like in an inert state. They don't interact. But at some point they will, but I'll long be dead, so I'm not worried about it.
Boy, I would hate to be in your property when if you guys move on and
we don't have them on our property.
Waking up.
We don't have them. We don't have them on our property, but I wouldn't deep sea fish in Lake Michigan or anything. I don't know. I'm just saying there might be some. There might be some there. May or may not. I don't know.
I mean,
I'm not with him when he does that, so I don't know where they are. I don't know where the bodies are buried.
Yeah, I mean, they have come to the property before we really knew how to protect ourselves. Dorinda got strangled one early evening by one of them, or getting strangled by one of them, and I had an occasion where there was a gentleman about 70 miles from us. Me and my original partner were working that case, and he was psychic, and the guy was like, I don't think I'm going to have you guys do this. I want to get my life together, and all this kind of stuff. And then my friend, who knew nothing about it, he calls me up and he says, "What the hell's going on?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, I'm hearing this demon laugh." And he says, "You guys aren't going to get him. I got him under total control." And so I decided to text the guy, and I says, "Well, let me tell you, it's okay. You don't want to do anything. That's fine. That's your decision. But this is what's going to happen." And I listed out. Then he came back and he says, "You know what? I think I'm going to have you guys come and do it." Now, at that moment, Dorinda's working a job. She was working late at night. And I'm sitting in the living room with my dog in my lap. And there's a deck outside where the window is. And I heard this noise. And then something just came to that window and attacked me right at that second. And the dog took off and hid. And it was like, 3 weeks for that dog to even go near that area. Mm-hmm. And I got beat up pretty bad. And she came home and said, "What the hell happened to you?" And I said, "That demon got me when I was, down there." I finally took care of the one, but it was, it just shows you, I mean, it was so instantaneous. It was seconds when I just text this guy, the thing came after me.
Trial and error, like to learn to protect ourselves. Cause we had to figure out what worked and what didn't work. So there was trial and error all the time. We were trying to, so when he wrote that book, I mean, those things are tried and true that we've learned that these are what work, and there's other things that don't work. And what I find really interesting is that when new people come in to try to join the group, because we do have Society of Demonologists, they always try to change things up. And it's like, dude, no, you're not changing it up, because this is what works. And we're not going to risk anything just because, you read something on the internet, so it's tried and true what we do.
Yeah. So you get a lot of basically what I consider unteachables. They just do their own thing. They don't listen. It's like, you know what? I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I've suffered a lot of pain and misery learning how to deal with this. And, be smart and just follow what we tell you to do. And you'll come out okay.
So I got to ask, I'm kind of curious, do you miss the regular just ghost hunting?
No, I started ghost hunting like back in 1968. I mean, Hans Holzer's my hero back then. And, I used old reel tape recorder and 35 millimeter camera. We didn't have all the stuff. We didn't have even any software to analyze the audio, That was my specialty, was EVPs later on in the years. That was my specialty. But, I mean, it's I guess it's kind of boring in a way. I mean, my tack is with ghost hunting is I'm trying to help people. We do a lot of residentials and things like that. I'm not big into the commercial stuff, where everybody's going out and having a good time and doing all this hunting and stuff.
Right.
And so if it's not actually helping anybody to deal with this, I usually don't deal with it. I mean, I did my time doing that stuff, and then later on, I've done some ghost rescues and some cases down in Detroit, suicides and things like that. And then finally, I was able to introduce Durinda to it. Was it last September?
Yeah,
that we.
That's new for me. The ghost rescue. Yeah, I didn't do that before, so it's a new thing. So
yeah, and we had this. The woman was she about 77, I think she was, and she had an apartment. And there was another lady that, and she died. God, I think in 84
something in the 1980s. Yeah,
yeah. And this woman moved in, and she was mid 60s. And she had her grandchildren, had pictures of them on her bureau. And then she used to bake cookies and things like this. And then she'd come out and the cookies be rearranged, or it looked like bite marks were taken out of them. And she couldn't figure out what was going on. And she had a strange feeling for this one room, and she slept in the other room. So we were called in, I think originally for the demonic, to see if there was demons there.
Yeah.
When we walked in, and we ended up finding this older woman that was dead. And so usually when you deal with ghosts like that, to pass them on, is that you got to get them grounded in reality. So Durinda was talking for her as she would talk to Durinda, and she'd tell me what she was saying. And basically what we ended up doing was, she's living in a closet in her old bedroom is where she was. And so I just tried to bring that reality. Look is this your bed? Is this the coverings that you use? Are these your paintings? And she's looking at all this stuff and all of a sudden realizing things have changed, because she doesn't see it that way. She sees it the way it used to be. And then she started breaking down. And then eventually, told her, well, your grandkids are growing up and they probably got kids. You probably got great grandkids,
Right.
And, they don't really need you anymore. They're doing fine and all this. And eventually she, I think that's when the light appeared, and Durinda was describing it was like a crack, but a bright light coming through it. And I'm standing by the closet. There's a bed between me and Durinda. And so I tell Durinda, I says, take her by the hand. And the Durinda's like, it's squeezing her hand really hard. And I says, just kind of in your mind, just start walking her to the light. And the lady got to the light and she said, can you come with me? And Durinda said, no, it's not my time. I can't go. You're going to have to go on your own. And then it just opened up a little wider, and she stepped in and it slammed shut. Now I'm standing right next to it. I don't see any of this. And the next thing I know, I felt the shutter of that thing close. It literally shook the bureau, and it shook underneath me briefly, like a little earthquake when it closed up.
Everyone in the room felt it. Yeah.
And it was just, the environment just totally changed. There was nothing there anymore. And we checked back to the lady, and it's no problems at all. It's home. It's none of this paranormal stuff going on.
Okay, well, Ashley is asking what's happening, and so we are discussing some cases that they've worked on where they were just explaining how they helped a spirit pass on and move on to the next stage. And we were discussing how they got into demonology, so you can catch up on that. And I'm actually going to shift for a moment because you mentioned cryptids. And it's something that I've just started getting more and more aware of and hearing more about. So what are your favorite cryptids that you like to research?
My favorite is Bigfoot. I've been researching him for over 50 years. I'm writing a book on it right now. Actually, I'm just about finished with it. I'm doing the last chapter. And I have a lot of genetic material that is currently at Cambridge, England, that I'm still waiting for them to do the test to see what it shows. Now, I was hoping to be done before the book came out, but I don't think it's kind of neck and neck kind of thing, so I don't think it's going to happen. But yeah, same thing. I go in and I've been, I had an encounter when I was 14 years old with a Sasquatch. I didn't know what the hell I was looking at. This was been in 1968. I had no idea what I was looking at. And I always kept it in mind And over the years, I always kept looking for them, and I started learning, their the signs of the Sasquatches when in a particular area, and then I learned what kind of areas, the habitats where they reside. And so over time, I got really good at tracking them. I can go in an area now, and I'll tell you if they're in there or not, and I can track them down to the general area where they're at. And Durinda's joined me on that many times. Since we got married, we started going up. And
I've seen one.
I'd go out.
I've seen a couple.
Yeah, I would go out and and that's what's in the book here. I would go out and spend like 8 days living in the swamp, and they were in there, heavily in there, and interact with them, And so the book's all about that, and little experiments that I did, and showing their intelligence, and just a variety of things will be in that book that I'm finishing up now.
So Paula has an interesting question for you, but before I get to that, I was curious, since you're saying you spent like a week in the swamps with them. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like either they're really good at hide and seek and that's why people haven't found them, or do you feel like they're actually come in through portals and that's why they're only here for certain times and you can only see them certain ways?
Well, they're here. And from my experience, they are, they avoid mankind. They see us as a dangerous predator.
Which we are.
When you go in the wilderness, when you're walking, you look in a particular direction. You might look straight ahead or something like that. And what the Sasquatch does is they always make sure they're not in your line of vision. They could be laying on the ground. They could be up in a tree. Mm-hmm. That's the reason you don't see them. Most times they're aware when you're in that area before you're even aware they're even there. So, as the portal part, yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about that. I haven't witnessed that. The Indians talk a lot about that because I'm in the areas that's all Indians up in there, Native Americans, the Ojibwas, and the Little River Band and Potawatomis, all those tribes that are up there. So I don't know as far as portals go, but they're very good at hide and seek. Very good at it.
Yeah.
I just think of the portal because we've never been able to find like a village or a home that you can say this is where Sasquatch lives. And so I'm like,
oh, I have.
Oh, you have?
I found shelters that they build, several different types. And I have pictures of it in the book. I got a lot of pictures in the book of all these things as well. And I've used to hunt actually with an Odawa Indian. The part that I talk about is 2013 when I had these encounters. Because when we first went in there, he was with me, and we were deep in the swamp, and we were, oh my God, I think there was, we couldn't figure it was 6 or 7 Sasquatches that came in that night and surrounded us. And we were trying to be very passive. And I mean, we didn't know we were going to see the sunrise. We just didn't know what they were going to do. And we couldn't get out. I mean, we had our vehicles there with an access road, but they were blocking that area. So we were just kind of trapped. And this went on all night till about 3 a.m. So finally we just screw it. And we went to bed. And then after that, the next morning, we just found all the evidence in that. But yeah, that's kind of the way it goes.
And in Michigan, we have a lot of acreage forest. And, you have to go deep in, to find stuff. But there's some habitats there. I mean, like there's stick stacking. They stack sticks and they do all kinds of stuff. But you got to go in there. I mean, it's like you go in no man's land and all of a sudden you see something that's, like an axe or a thing, like a, I don't know how you explain it. But anyway, you see these things and you're like, okay, how did that get there? Who did that? So, and there's footprints. We've gotten some footprints.
Yeah,
people don't even know.
You have to know. I always used to go through and areas where storms went through, and I'd look at debris and how things fall, and then you have to sit there and do an analysis to see could this fall naturally, And after a while, I know what they look like. I know their signatures. A lot of times they'll leave a feather, like a turkey feather, in one of their sites. I call them pointers that they're using to direct other Squatches to a particular area. They build these teepee structures that always mean water. Water is nearby. Every time I find them, they do a horizontal, like they'll take apart a tree actually and put it across trees
Right.
on the border of a field, that type of thing.
And there's a lot of people out there in the wilderness that don't even pay attention, because we found some footprints and we were trying to get our stuff together, and these ATVs came and just ran over them. And we were trying to stop them, and they just ran over them. And they didn't even, I'm like, oh my God, we had this and it was gone. So people don't even pay attention. They're out doing whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see these, but what Durinda was talking about, these are some of the.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And little ones too. Baby
ones. Teenager. There's a young one.
Yeah.
Aww.
So there's breeding populations out there.
Yeah.
Got 4 toes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see this one. It's a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Oh wow, you can even see like markings, like where his foot got scratched on.
Yeah, this was it was actually standing on a stone. This mark right here, it was standing on a stone.
Yeah.
But it's it's a very active area up there. We're going back up there in August. We'll spend a week up there, gathering more material. One of the things we're going to try to do is that when I get a print, is I'll find the place where the deepest part of the print, that's where they have most contact with the ground. I'll liberate a little bit of the soil, and then that will send that to the lab. They might be able to extract, eDNA off from that.
Right. So Durinda brought up a good point that when I was in Arkansas at a place where they said they've had Bigfoot sightings there, they always talked about the X. And so I was going to ask your opinion of, does the X really like a marker for the Bigfoots, or is that just something nature does and we're confusing it and it really doesn't mean there's Bigfoots in the area?
Well, the X, of course, can, depending on your point of view as you're moving through the woods, anything can come across like an X. These are actually like 2 trees that would pull up out of the ground and crossed. Sometimes the cross is on the trail. And a lot of people used to interpret that as, oh, that means, stay out. No, these things are not for humans. This is for themselves. What it actually means is home. This is a place where they sleep. This is a place where they eat. And I've been for years, trying to figure out what it meant. And then one day when I was camping, I came back to camp and I had an X on the back of my tent that was laid up. And that's when I knew it means home. That's where I slept. That's where I ate. That's what it meant. Mm-hmm. And so I would now follow those, and I would find locations where they had occupied. I'd find deer bones and fur, piles of that, up there where they had been eating.
Mm-hmm. So one question I also want to pick your brain about is same location in Arkansas is they had like rocks where they were here and then all of a sudden it arced over to here. No anything, like no base holding it up. It's just, and you can't look at that and go, well, nature stacked those rocks that way. Something had to do that. And they're small rocks, but still to be in a perfect arc. Do you think that's something that Bigfoot would make or do, or is that something more likely a human did to make everyone think a Bigfoot was around?
Well, I mean, in Michigan, we ran across a lot of rock stacking, but that was a thing people were doing.
Right.
With Bigfoot, they used rocks. They clack them together.
They throw rocks.
They throw them at me. I've had so many rocks thrown at me over the years. But I don't know. I'd have to look and see, but I would doubt it. It was probably just somebody did it.
Because the amazing thing why it made me question it was you could feel energy coming from it. It's like it would be hot, and then you would put your hand in front of the arc, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, it feels cooler. And then you go to the other side, and it's like, well, now it's warming back up. So you could tell a difference. But
rocks do have energy because, in
Right.
Native Americans, we call them grandma stones. They give you knowledge and things like that. So stones do have energy. But there are people that go around and stack rocks. So, it's hard to know that particular thing. Like for Joe and I, we would probably say no, because, you got to be a little more scientific about that. But with the energy and stuff, that is an interesting thing. It could be.
Yeah, especially if it's near a trail where humans can
Yeah.
walk in that, or paths. Because when I go out, I'm deep in the swamps. I'm on bear trails and deer trails, the game trails, and that's where I come across these things.
Yeah, it is a trail, but it's on private land, and so it's restricted area. But yeah,
that's the
there's
kind of
no
area
way.
that Sasquatch likes.
Loves,
It's private areas.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to Paula's question while we're here is, do you believe the Jersey Devil exists?
I don't know. I've never investigated. I would love to investigate it. I mean, I've seen documentaries on it. I think I read a book on it. I don't know. There's something going on. I don't know if what is there matches the story, what they think it is, but there might be some kind of cryptid running around out there.
So is the Jersey Devil like Dogman?
He's in the Barrens. He's in the Barrens.
Okay, but is he like Dogman? Is that kind of like? Oh, is it different? Okay.
There's a long story how it comes about, but
all right.
But I would like to investigate it. That'd be kind of fun to go out there and investigate it.
Yeah, she says, "Thank you. I'm always curious of others' thoughts." And yeah, the Barren Pines.
Yeah.
And Durinda brought up another one. I'm curious because I know it's been cited in Michigan. Is the Dogman? What's your thoughts on the Dogman?
Well, that's my second cryptid thing. I have hunted it. I have interviewed people that actually have seen it. I had an encounter with it at a distance. So yeah, it exists, but I haven't really spent a tremendous amount of time on it because I've been focused on Bigfoot for the last several years trying to get this book and research done on it. But I would like to start getting more involved in that part of it. Unfortunately, I can't find anybody who wants to hunt
including me. I don't want. It's like I'll do Bigfoot. I'll do demons. I will not do Dogman. It scares me. I don't know why, but it does.
So you think Dogman is a relative of, or is a misidentified werewolf?
Well, I don't. It depends on what you call a werewolf. Are you talking about a man that turns into wolf? I mean, I can't think of the term for him, but in Latin it means dog-headed men. And Christopher Columbus talked about running into them in the Americas. Marco Polo talked about running into them on his journeys. And Alexander the Great had an encounter with them on the island of these dog-headed people, describing exactly what you're talking about.
Right. And I looked up because somebody asked me about it being here in Texas, and I had never heard of it, and looked it up and found out they are global. Yes. They are out in the summer. They're out in the winter. They're out in the day. They're out in the night. So there's really no, in my opinion, there's like no way to predict when you're going to come across.
Yeah, they're I think the earliest sighting I remember is something like 440 BC. It's the earliest sighting that I found. So they've been around a long time. But this Indian friend that I hunted with, his father back in 58 in an area, this lake that had a lot of Bigfoot activity. I mean, we had all kinds of footprints. There must have been close to 30 different prints in that place. And his dad used to fish that lake, and he had an encounter with a dog man that really scared the hell out of him. We didn't run into anything like that years later, but yeah, he's in Michigan for sure. Mostly on the west coast along Lake Michigan, where a lot of the sightings take place. But it prefers swamps. It really likes the swamps.
Okay. Paula is asking, she says, they say it appears to look like what a real werewolf would look like, I believe, right?
Yeah, I mean, its eyes are kind of an amber orange color. And the odd thing about them, it's not reflective. It actually glows. It's like a self-illuminating. And they have a long snout. and it almost looks kind of like a German Shepherd in a way. It's got the ears are really pointy. The upper body is like that of a man, very similar to a man. And the arms are longer, probably to about knees because it runs on all fours and also stands on its hind legs, which usually about 7 feet tall. So according to the Hollywood version of the werewolf, yeah, it looks a lot like a werewolf.
Right.
That's
And
what I was gonna
so,
say. What does it look like the Hollywood version? So, I mean, unless you've actually seen one, you're not gonna really know what a real werewolf looks like until you actually see it, I guess, you know.
right. And to be honest, I never really bought into the, oh, if a wolf bites a man in the full moon,
Yeah.
he becomes a wolf walking on 2 feet. I'm like, yeah, that's Hollywood.
There's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
Hollywood.
I researched this, wrote an article on it many years ago, and in actuality, people by choice became werewolves, and it usually involved some sort of a belt that was given to them by the evil one or whatever, and they put this belt on, and they would turn into a wolf, or if they drank from the puddle of a wolf's print and could turn into a wolf. But there was actually no physical changes ever really took place. And basically, what those stories were covering up was cannibalism, is what was going on. That Stump guy,
Right.
that German guy, that was cannibalism. And the thing about it is, the majority of the werewolf stories all originate out of France, not England, but in France.
Right.
In the 15 to 1700s, I believe it was, somewhere around in there.
Right. And they even made a movie about it because there was a story, this village. They called it Brotherhood of the Wolf, I think it was called. But so the village had all of a suddenly these kids and people disappearing in the woods, and they thought it was the wolf. And so they hunted the wolves to near extinction in France because of this. And they started saying, oh, it was a dire wolf. And I was like, was a dire wolf like a cousin or a misidentified dog man? Or
No, dire wolf has been extinct for at least 30,000 years. And it's a wolf. It's not what these things are. These are almost human-like.
Skinwalker Ranch, they have a myth about the dire wolf too, right?
right.
That they saw or something.
Right. These supposed portals that these things are coming out of, because a dire wolf is really large. I mean, the withers, I don't know, 4 feet high, something like that. I mean, it's a huge wolf. But it died out a long time ago. But that's not to say there's still some around. But that wouldn't be Dogman. That is an actual wolf. That's in the fossil records. This thing walks on its hind legs, and it's funny. Usually I noticed when I was working with this 16-year-old boy that had this several encounters during hunting season in Michigan. It was contacting him like in his dreams. He would dream that he's out running with them and stuff, and he'd wake up and he'd hear him howling, in the night. And usually they were solo, they were in like a bear. They were by themselves. But when it was a full moon, they would collect as a group, and they were always trying to get him to come out with them. He never did, but they were always trying to do that. I'll have to do a story on it one of these days. It was a very fascinating encounter or interview that I had with this guy.
Wow, that is interesting, and that opens up a whole nother doors. And I think if we keep going down this avenue, we may have to do another show.
That's right.
But Paula's flipping back to the Bigfoots, and she says, do you believe there are multiple like Bigfoots?
You mean more than one Bigfoot?
I think she's talking about, like, I think it's in Russia. They had the abominable snowman. They're saying is a Bigfoot.
Oh, Yeti. All those
and Yeti and Sasquatch and all these different names. Are they all the same? Oh, she's saying no, Dogman. Is a Dogman like a Bigfoot?
Oh.
No. No, they're not. I had a friend that thought that it was somebody was misidentifying a Bigfoot is a dog man. And then when I gave him the information, materials, he said, no, it's not. It's not a Bigfoot at all. You see it, you'll know it's no Bigfoot.
Well, they say that they smell like wet dogs, the Bigfoot. I have a thing. I think Bigfoot smells like a skunk rolled in garbage. That's what I've smelled out in the woods, a skunk rolled in garbage. But some people have said that it smelled like a wet dog. So I'm wondering if that's what they're thinking.
And I've tracked Bigfoot, and the biggest one that I ever came across was 12 feet tall. Dogman is like, he's strong and muscular, but he's much thinner. Bigfoot is very, very large, very big. Muscular, almost like not a bodybuilder, but more like a power lifter. You know, he got the bulk.
Right.
And it's totally different.
Yeah, because they take trees and twist them and break them off. So that's the thing. When you look at different symbols, you have to see how they are, because they'll take it and literally twist it and then bring it down.
And that's the difficulty when you're hunting the dogman, is that they don't leave things behind like the Bigfoot does. The Bigfoot leaves all kinds of stuff, stick structures, glyphs, that type of things for themselves. Dogman doesn't leave anything like that. You just have to go by sightings and then go in that area and knowing the kind of habitats in and see if you can track it down.
Yeah,
what you're going to do when you find it, that's a different story.
Right. And I'm going to throw a topic at you that I'm not sure if you've heard of or researched: the Alaska Triangle.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Do you think that's where like Bigfoot and a lot of them could be coming from and traveling around or hanging out there, or do you think that's something totally different?
The Bigfoot is basically everywhere. It's like on all the continents, it's all the states of the United States, and they go back long time. The triangle, most thing that I'm familiar with is the UFO sightings and things like that. And there's bases up there, which would, that'd be a good reason for UFOs to be hanging around. Air Force bases up there. But no, they're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Yes.
Do you have small pockets of them? We have game reserves here. They're here in these game reserves, and they're very, very difficult to find because they're so good about keeping hidden. But when we go up, like she's talking about, where there's millions of acres up there, there's populations are much bigger populations. So you have got a lot more communication between the groups, and you see a lot more of those stick structures and glyphs than you do down here. It's mostly
to give you an idea how remote it is up there. You could be driving for an hour and not see a car. It's that remote up there in the UP where we go. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The other reason why I mentioned the Alaska Triangle is the native tribes that are up there, the Eskimos, all have reports of seeing like thunderbirds that are extinct and dinosaurs and a bunch of what we think are extinct, and they're like, there's so much vast wilderness. It's like, could they be hanging out there?
They're finding stuff all the time. Things are supposed to be extinct, and they're finding them. So, sure, why not?
And Bigfoot is a lot like Native Americans, because they do have like what we call a winter home and a summer home. They do migrate through areas. So you'll have an area that's really kind of a hot spot, and then it'll move, several miles down the road, and then you'll find more things. But
they basically, like the Indians do. Indians have their camps, like she said. And the reason for those camps is that they're more likely to survive better in the winter if they're in this location. And in the summertime, they go to that location. The Sasquatch go where the food is, which is like the white-tailed deer in our area.
So Bigfoots they like to eat deer? I never heard of that.
They like deer? What?
They like to eat deer?
Yeah, their main source in Michigan is whitetail.
I can't blame them. I like venison.
You like venison too?
You like it raw?
Tartar?
Well, I've never actually had venison tartar, but I like my steaks medium rare, so or rare but not like bloody rare.
Yeah.
Well, Sasquatches are omnivores, and they will eat roadkill too. So they take advantage of whatever they can get. Because you got to think about this. You got something that can be up to from maybe 800 to 1,000 pounds, and it takes a lot of calories for that body. So they're very smart about what they do. They're not going to break bush, running through the thicket of the. What they'll do is they'll follow trails, they'll walk roads, they'll walk creek beds, they'll walk rivers, whichever's going to expel the least amount of energy. It's the way they work. And they, like I said, they'll eat pretty much everything.
That's interesting because I've heard a lot of stories of like people that will say like they hit a deer or something and they knew the deer was dead. They put it on the side of the road, go to get, someone to help move or bury it or do something.
And it's gone.
And it's gone when they get there. So you think that could be the Bigfoots are coming?
Well, Michigan, we have people that do that for a living. They go around and pick up dead carcasses. So, but yeah, Sasquatch has there's hunters that I talked to that shot a deer with an arrow and it wasn't quite dead yet. And it went so many yards before it dropped dead. And they walked up and there's a Sasquatch with over his shoulder walking off with the deer. So they take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, free lunch.
Bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, free lunch.
Did the Sasquatch leave the arrow?
Yeah. It could be, but you do have people that drive around and do collect the carcasses. And then they just, stick them in the woods somewhere. I've run across piles of them being near a highway or something like that. I don't know about other states, but this state does do that.
Okay. So, Durinda, I'm going to turn to you for a moment because you and I have something in common, and that's Reiki. And
yes.
So I'm curious how you feel the Reiki aids you in doing all of this, or does it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, energy healing, all that energy. But the first demon encounter that I sort of had was when I did Reiki on Joe. And it's kind of written in the book. And I did Reiki on him, and all of a sudden these scratch marks came up. So, I mean, that was pretty interesting. And I learned that I got the names when I did Reiki because you know how, Michael, when you do Reiki, sometimes when there's organs that are missing, it kind of feels like a black hole, sort of.
Right.
It felt like when I was doing his stomach, it felt like there was a hole there and I fell to the ground.
She actually fainted.
I fainted to the ground.
And it just sucked the energy right out of her. And she just went right out.
And then I started getting the names and stuff for the Reiki. So the Reiki has helped me immensely with that. And I think that is a very powerful thing that we have as the Reiki.
Right.
We have a
dog
man.
We have a dog. It's a dog man back there.
You say dog man. But yes, I feel because that helps protect me. I feel that it helps me with a lot of things, Don't you find, Michael, when you do Reiki that your abilities to talk to the other side is heightened as well because the energy is flowing through you?
And funny story about that, I was sharing on another interview with someone was when I first did Reiki when I was younger, I could feel the energy and they were like, oh, you're natural. And so I had no interest in pursuing it because I was like, oh, well, if I'm natural and can already do it, why go learn it?
Right.
And then years later, I came across a friend who was a medium and he does Reiki. And I went to one of his Reiki circles and he teaches you when you're reading the body, one side's masculine, one side's feminine.
Mm-hmm.
You could be picking up a past life energy. And so it's like I learned to read the body and learn to read, like you're saying, is this something from the past? Is this something current? Is it from the masculine side, feminine side? Is it mother side, father side? Who is it? What is it? And I was like, wow. And I ended up getting my Reiki Master from him because I was like, man, I never knew you could combine these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Energy work. Yeah. 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 And everyone has a little bit of energy in them. So what Reiki does is it turns it up a little bit. So like it's at 150 degrees, but it brings it up to 350 degrees, and like an oven. So when you become a master, it just brings the energy up a little higher. So that's what I always try to tell people when they say, because everybody has a little bit of energy, and I believe that everyone has a little bit of psychic in them too, but it's like a muscle that they have to work.
Right.
So I
So
don't
you're
think
a
I'm
little
special at
different
what I
than
do.
yeah, you're a little different than I am. When I tell people I have the Reiki Master license and level, and they're like, "Ooh, really?" I'm like, and I look at them and I go, "All it means is I can teach you.
Yeah, you can
That's what
attune
the
them.
master level is I can teach it." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh," I'm like, "Yeah, it doesn't mean I'm at like some high ultimate level."
You are though.
Oh, I
You are.
know, but
It just turns it up a little bit more. That's all.
yeah,
Because you have the energy to attune, a person to have the Reiki symbols or whatever. But everyone has a little bit of Reiki because we all have that little energy in us, and it just when you do the attunements, it just brings it up a little bit better. It's
yeah.
just a little bit higher. Sort of like instead of getting your master's, you're getting your PhD. That's all. Really.
Yeah, I think it was Reiki 2 was the one that I really liked because I learned how to do it remote. Like I
Yes, the
didn't even have to have
distant is a good thing.
someone
Yeah.
right
Right.
there. It's like Joe could be saying right now, "Man, my shoulder's hurting," and I could go boom right
Yeah,
into Reiki
exactly.
mode right here. I don't even have to be in the room.
It's his
That
elbow.
to me
His
was
elbow is
cool.
hurting. Help him out, Michael. He's been complaining about it all day. His elbow. Right, Joe?
I got a torn ligament on my elbow dealing with demons several months back.
Yeah.
So have at it.
But
So
that's the thing is it's a cool energy thing that you do, and
yeah,
like you said, you get information when you when you do the energy field. And I feel that that's how I know like people's names and things like that, because it's a form of psychometry. If you think about it, Reiki really is kind of a form of psychometry. If you're touching a person's body, you are getting their information. So
yeah, and I don't know if it's the same for you or if it's something unique. Is when I do the Reiki, when I'm, how you first do the scan of the body and everything,
mhm.
it's like I see a holographic image pop up in front of me with all these lines through it, and some are dimmer than others. And so it's like I go, oh, I need to pluck these lines that are dimmer, clean them so they're
Mhm.
shining bright. And then it's like, yeah, people seem to get relief from that, but I don't even know what those lines are.
Well, that's your gift. That's the gift in reading it. For me, mine is when I scan it, I feel the hot, cold. There's like a void or something. There's like different things that I feel in there. So when I do the scan, I don't see the lines like you see, but I feel the energy that goes through, and I can tell, like you sit there and you kind of go, okay, there's something going on here. And then I'm like, okay, so your hip, and they're like, or um, one of the big ones that I always get is, I think you have a hernia, or something. And they're like, how did you know? And I'm like, well, I feel it, So there's different things like
Right.
that too. That go
Yeah,
on.
I've felt that, and that's like you're saying is you feel these cold spots. And one of the things that amazes me is like I could be like somebody will say my back is hurting, and I'll be directed to put all my energy at their ankles, and I'm like, how is this helping their back? Their back is over there. I'm down here. What? And it's like, and then it's like, that's when I think they were showing me how everything is
Connected.
interconnected with our body. And so it's like, you may think it's up there, but actually the blockage is down here. Or it could be that it's so tender up there, they're able to push the energy through here, and the body's more tolerant of it, so it doesn't get overwhelmed. I don't
Right.
know. It's interesting
Or
to me.
if you're feeling the ankles and it's in the back, maybe they're walking or doing something that's creating that pain up there. So if you straighten this out, it will even out the stuff, because our hips and our legs and everything is all connected to our back. I mean, you know, we have a core and all that stuff. So, you know, it's like everything is connected. So when you find something there, and that's the thing, because the energy tells you where you need to go. So that's where you go. And so, and that's you're doing exactly how it should be. The energy tells you what to do. And if a person's like sitting there going, it's in my back, and you're at his ankles, and then all of a sudden they're going, hey, what are you doing? I'm clearing the energy. I'm getting that for you. So works out.
I'm also wondering if you ever do like I do, where they tell you you're not supposed to do like energy work on yourself. And I'm like, I'll feel my shoulder twinging and I'm like, I'll blast it. I'm like, I don't necessarily always want to go to somebody else when it's like, I feel like I have the energy. Why can't I do it on myself?
Well, that's interesting because Reiki 1 is supposed to be healing thyself. That's how I was always taught, was Reiki 1 is you do it on yourself. And then Reiki 2 is when you do it with others. And then Reiki 3 is when you can teach others how to do it, you know, and attune people. So Reiki 1 should be self Reiki. That's what I was taught. But see, there's so many people, because, you know, I mean, you know, like I was telling you, I'm an old duck, so I've been doing this for a really long time. But, you know, it's just like everything else. People take this and they take the core of it, and then they go and do all these different things. You know, there's crystal Reiki, and there's this kind of Reiki, and it's that kind of Reiki. And it's like, I just have the basic Reiki, and that's what I use, you know, from, you know.
Yeah, sometimes you don't need to mess with what works.
Yeah, I know if it does. And that's the thing, because, you know, like everybody wants to have, you know, make it their own, and which is cool, you know, because with the stones and the crystals and all this stuff, that's cool. You can use stones and all that stuff with it. I've done that myself, but, you know, it's the base, you know, you have the basics, you know, so.
Yeah. One thing I've learned is I can pull in like the elements. And so if I'm somewhere and I'm like, man, I'm getting thirsty, I will sit there and be like, and I will form like this energy ball in my hand and go, this is the essence of like water. And then I'll just be like, and I will feel like I just had a glass of water. It'd be like,
that's very cool. No, no, that doesn't happen to me. So that's very cool, Michael. It's cool. Keep yourself hydrated while you're doing it.
Yeah, you've got to these days, especially living in Texas. So, Joe, I know we're at our hour, so I had a couple more questions for you if you're open to it, or we can end it. It's your time.
Go ahead.
Okay. You pointed out that you have worked with organizations like APRO and MUFON. Yep. I've heard of MUFON. I understand what that is. What is APRO?
Air Phenomena Research Organization, founded in the 60s. Coral Lorenz is one of the first UFO groups that did investigations. They were up, I think up until the 80s before they ceased to exist. MUFON kind of appeared in, I think mid-70s. I joined MUFON when they were fairly new. It used to be called the Midwest UFO Network. And then when, I can't even think of his name now, when he moved out to Texas, they changed it to the Mutual UFO Network. So that's what APRO was. It was an early UFO organization.
Yeah. So I'm curious your take on, is MUFON just based in like the Americas, or because I know I talked to people in like Great Britain and they're like, they had the GUFON or something. They call it something else with the G. And so I'm like, so one's global, one's not, or are these just two identicals that are just working not side by side?
I'm not sure. I don't. I still have friends in MUFON, but I don't deal with them. I haven't dealt with them in years. I just kind of don't like the way that they run things now. They don't really. Give you an example. They have a database, so if you have a UFO sighting, you can go in and key in, I saw this, and it's in the database. And I said, well, you guys go out and investigate it. You know, make sure that it really happened and talk to witnesses. No, we don't do that. Well, hell, how the hell are you going to know if it's any good? I mean, it could be fake for all you know. So now you got a database that's worthless. And in my day, I went out and I would investigate, and I find out that, there's other witnesses that collaborated, and you got even more story. And that's what we used to do it. And I was told I was a dinosaur, so that's where they are now. I just don't have much faith in their data anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are in the age of where, like you're saying, people will flood in and say, "Oh, I had a UFO experience," and it could be the same experience with like 3 or 4 words changed, and you think, "Oh, I now there's like 13 UFO encounters over here." No, it's the same one. Someone's making up and trying to make people believe there's more, so they
Right.
go,
And
"Oh, that's real."
you would also find abduction cases, later on when you follow it up on these kinds of investigations. So they had, I don't know if you heard of the Transcription Project.
No.
Basically what it entailed was that you had people that were seeing mental health people, psychologists, therapists, and through hypnosis, they documented all this stuff. So they took this information, and then we had a group of transcribers that took the audio, transcribed it, and then that data was put into a database that we initially built. I was on the original project on that when it first started. And so then it would be used for research and, figuring out, okay, how many times does this happen? Or is there any kind of patterns here? Jacobs, the history professor that's a big UFOologist, I don't even know if he's still alive today. The Secret Life, he wrote that book. That was all research that he got from that database. And so through that, I ended up doing investigations of abductees here in Michigan. I'd go to their house, I'd get involved with the families and all the alien crap that was going place all throughout Michigan. And from about 97 till maybe 2002, somewhere around there.
So, what's your take on abductions? Is because I don't want to say all of them real or all of them fake, because I know, being a history major, every legend has an ounce of truth to it. So I'm confident there are some real ones, but what do you think is causing some of them that have been proven to be not alien abduction? What's your take on that? Do you think it is the government doing stuff, or just
what was that? They had a term for that. Military something. They had a term for it. MyLab or something, where the military. No. That's a place.
Not that one. Okay.
The military was kidnapping abductees and then drugging them and trying to get information. They were under observation. I'm sure there's some government stuff involved, but my take on that was that you're not going to get anything out of the government. They're not going to admit to anything. But look how far we've come all these years. We should forget about the government and do the investigations ourselves and get our own answers. Because sitting and waiting for approval from the government, here we are 75, 80 years later down the line, and we still don't know anything.
Right. They still like to say Roswell was a weather balloon, and it's like, yeah, I really don't think so. And then I actually found out when I went to Roswell that there were 3 Roswell incidents with UFOs, and I've only ever heard of the one. I was like, wait, there were 2 more? Wait, what?
Yeah, the other crashes, up in Corona and that,
Are you familiar with Project Blue Book?
I am.
Well, Joe actually met Dr. Hynek. He shared pipe tobacco with Dr. Hynek when he came to Michigan.
I worked with him. We had a case that he was down in central Mexico working a case, and I had a case up here in upper Michigan that were very similar. So this was after he did Close Encounters of the Third Kind and that. And so we met down in Jackson at the Space Center. And then I started working with him on some cases for a couple years because he died not long after that, died in 86. Right.
Which, maybe you can answer this. I was always interested in the History Channel's version of Project Blue Book, the series they did, where they made him the believer and the Air Force was like, no, this isn't real. We got to cover this up. And he was like, we can't cover this up. Was that real that he was really like that? Or is that...
Well, Hynek told me that, back in the day, they had the basic filing cabinets where they kept all the cases. Their best cases were the military pilots' sightings in that. That would have been ground crews would see it, the pilot would see it, might get it on their gun cameras, and then the radar would see it. And so when he went one day to look at a case, it wasn't there. And that's when he realized there was 2 levels here. They were taking all the good cases and moving them up to a higher level, and he had the crap cases. And so it was basically just an explanation. They were just, explaining things. And he told me for years, he said, yeah, I was afraid to drive through Michigan. So I had to do that because I had a cabin up in Canada because of the swamp gas thing that took place.
Right.
And he said that they asked him, I said, what kind of things could create light and stuff like that? So, well, there's swamp gas, but have you ever seen swamp gas? It's just a little thing of flames, it's a very small, minor, is the gases, from the vegetation ignite, and nothing like what they were seeing. And so, and the Air Force took it, and, but that's when he became a believer, that he knew that things were being hidden. And then he told me of UFO sightings he had when he was in Canada. He was at his place and he actually saw a saucer, and then he saw the Canadian Air Force chasing it. It took off and they went after him in jet pursuit. So, yeah, he's a believer.
I like
as far as that movie goes, that series, he wasn't anything like that. He was like the typical egghead kind of guy, He wanted to be very physical, but I thought, well, he'd love this, man, because he's like a superhero in this movie. This TV series.
You make a good point. I love how our military likes to think this object is hovering in space and can split itself into multiple parts and come back together, but yet we can track it, send up jets to go, one toe to toe with it. It's like, you really think, we stand a chance in the air with these things?
Yeah, I mean, you look at those, what were those ones come out? 2014, those Navy videos and that?
The Tic Tac?
Yeah. I mean, to see what they did was just amazing. The speeds.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I heard somebody say that the Navy TikTok video was drone footage and it wasn't the real footage, and so we're made to believe they're disclosing this and going, yes, it's and they're like, that's not what actually was there or is taking place. It's kind of another governmental smokescreen to, I guess, fit whatever narrative they're trying to get us to or distract us from something else, which I've started to notice the disclosure of like UFOs and stuff with the government is always when something really bad is happening. They're like, oh, hey, look, let's put this over here and everybody will focus on that and we can sweep this under the rug.
Yeah. Paying no attention to the man by the curtain there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I know you guys, it's late for you guys. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm so grateful to have you guys on my show.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
This was a really fun episode, and I'm going to share with you, Nathan Sandoval said, this Joseph guy is awesome, very knowledgeable.
Well, thank you.
He knows the thing or two.
So before I switch over to our outro and end, where can people find both of you?
Well, I have a podcast called Wife of a Demon Hunter. You can find that on Spotify or Google Podcast, TuneIn Podcast. It's just Wife of a Demon Hunter. And then I do have a Facebook page called Society of Demonologists. So you can get a hold of us there. And then, Joe?
We have a website, but that's if you got a demon case. But it's called societyofdemonologists.org. And you can contact us through there, too.
And then he's got a book, too.
I was just saying, you have a book to promote.
He's got a book. It's called
Yep.
Demons: A Secular Look.
And
So
as
where
I
can
just,
people find your book?
it's Amazon has it, Target has it, Walmart has it.
Barnes and Noble.
It's global. I mean, you know, we even found it up in Oxford, England. It's there, so
Yeah,
it's all over.
Wow, was that a proud moment for you to find it in Oxford?
Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
it was quite surprising.
That's my goal. Is every time we travel, we got to look at a bookstore and see if his book is in there. Like, there it is. So, yay! So
That's a fun goal, actually.
So it's kind of like you can kind of look at it this way. We need an update on demons. I mean, we're working with stuff that's over 600-700 years old, and so this is the updated version. This is the modern version of demons.
because exorcisms don't work. So, I mean, some people have had exorcisms go on for 40 years. So exorcisms, you know, I mean, the Catholic Church has done exorcisms for years, but they don't work. You need to do something different. So,
right. What works for some doesn't work for all. So,
well, it works temporarily because, you know, if you don't bind the demon, it can jump from one person to another. So
it just comes back. Sometimes it comes back worse. The things that people don't understand, you see it in the movies that there's just this one demon they're battling, you know, Baal or Beelzebub or whatever. Not true. Demons are in gangs.
Yeah, they're pack hunters.
And they don't have names like Beelzebub. They have other names too.
Yeah, they have the names of the culture. They don't want you to guess their names. They'll name themselves even after inanimate objects. And they get really teed when Durinda comes up.
They get upset.
It's just like, you should hear the things the abuse that she gets from that side. It's really something else.
They call me all kinds of names, but then I know I got them. I'm like, that's the name then. It's gotta
so
be that.
basically what that book does is it looks at the demons in a modern eye. My experience in the field, I look at it like a scientist. I study their behaviors and stuff. Like I told you, I did all these testing, what kind of symbols worked or didn't work,
right,
and why they wouldn't work, that kind of information. It's my journey trying to save my friend that was being basically killed by this demon over a period of time. And then later on, I talk about the demon and do analysis, and it's just got a tremendous amount of information in it. And there's a lot of people that can't get more than maybe a third of the way through, and then they get past what I call the Pontiac house incident, and because it just terrifies them.
They get scared. They get scared.
Really scared. And they can't get past it.
It's like, we lived it. Joe and I have lived it. I don't come in until page 101 because Joe had another team before I came in. I got into the demon hunting sort of by accident. I wasn't planning on being part of his team, but you know, it explains in the book why I got in there. So
that's a good teaser to get people to go.
Yeah, why I got in there.
It's a good read. It's a lot of good stories in there, and I introduced a little bit of my ghost hunting in the very beginning, that type of stuff. So it's a good read.
That's very cool. I always enjoy hearing from people who have been investigating for a long time because I never even knew about it, and it's like I would see it on TV and think, oh, this is just something people do on TV, until I got tapped on the shoulder and was introduced to it in real life and realized, oh my gosh, this is real. And it's been quite a journey.
But the first time you actually see a ghost, you're like, oh my, they're real. Right?
Because I felt that way about demons. I thought, no, this is nonsense. This doesn't exist.
Right.
You know, because ghosts. I mean, if you're an angry old guy and you die, you're an angry old ghost. You know, your personality doesn't reboot. You're the same. And that's what I thought it was. And then initially I was dealing with some Catholics, and and that's why, they went the demon way. And then I found out, oh no, this is real.
Yep, the fun we put up with. But thank you again for coming on, and I appreciate you coming on at this late hour. I'm not sure if Michigan is in Central Time or Eastern Time.
Eastern.
We're in Eastern Time.
Yeah, we're right, like Chicago would be Central Time, and we're, So Lake Michigan. So we have 2 time zones in Michigan up in the UP. So we have Central Time and the Eastern Time up in the UP. But where we are, we're Eastern.
Okay, I had that feeling, and so yeah, I like to respect that because I know it's late and everybody's got to get up early for stuff. So I try to not go the 2 hours that some people do and going, oh, I can't keep you up that late.
Well, thanks for having us, Michael. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for coming on. And for those of you tuning in next week, we have a special episode on Wednesday. It's going to be at 4 o'clock with Brian John Laverty. And the reason it's on Wednesday at 4 o'clock is because I was supposed to do this interview this week, Tuesday, or last week, Tuesday. And as some of you know, my father ended up passing away early Wednesday morning. And so I was at the hospital with him Tuesday night. And so this episode is to make up for that. And I'm not doing an episode on July 4th because that's our Independence Day. And I know you all are going to be out watching fireworks instead of my show, so I respect that. So make sure you catch us next week, Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And I will sign us out for now.
You have just listened to The Energy That Surrounds Us with your hosts, Michael Koff and Carla Norris. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.